first off, it's a mindset shift, knowing that there's more than enough spots at the top, and it's important to bring women with us, because if not, then it's the same thing over and over again. So really having each other's back, really working together is important, because men work together all the time, right? Like that's how they're able to advance, because they collaborate, they have each other's backs. So as women, we need to have each other's backs, right?
Hi there. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Leah Alter.
And I'm Joanna Erisman.
And this is Women Share, a celebration of women in financial services.
Yes, and today we are so thrilled to welcome Sheena Yap Chan to the show. Sheena is a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, award-winning podcaster, and keynote speaker on a mission to close the gender confidence gap. She's the creator and host of the Tao of Self Confidence, a top-ranked podcast globally with over 1 million downloads, where she's interviewed hundreds of women, from celebrities to eight-figure CEOs, about their journeys to self-confidence. Through her work, including her best-selling book, Sheena helps women tap into their leadership potential and move beyond the limiting beliefs that often hold us back. I've had plenty of conversations about that here on the show, so this is great. Sheena's insights have been featured on platforms like Mindvalley, NBC News, and Fox, and she's delivered speeches for organizations like NASA and Live Nation. So today she's here with us to share her expertise and her story to help us grow our confidence, embrace leadership, and thrive in our industries like financial services, where we need more women at the top. So Sheena, thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to hear from you today.
Hey, ladies, thanks again for having me here. It's such an honor to be here. So I'm just super excited to have this chat.
Yeah, Sheena, we are so excited. I think what you are doing is going to resonate so much with our audience, especially around self-confidence. You can never really have too much of that.
Right.
So let's start with your podcast, the Tao of Self Confidence. What inspired you to start the podcast, and what do you really focus on the show?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I've always wanted to have a platform. And back then, I didn't even know what a podcast was. I just remember seeing it on iTunes, because we didn't have Apple Podcasts back then. And for me, representation was really important, especially when you grow up in North America, not having representation, not seeing anybody in the media that looked like you. So that was one of the reasons I started it. And also having support, just because we don't have a lot of support when it comes to confidence, especially being an Asian woman. Confidence is something that we don't talk about. We're usually told to stay in the background, never make any noise, just do as you're told. And so there's a lot of repressed feelings that we don't share. And then that's how we have all these like confidence issues. So those were both the purposes I started it, as representation, as a support system. And it's really just women being able to share their stories of confidence, because as women, we're afraid to share what we go through. We think vulnerability is a weakness when it's a strength. And then being able to hear all the stories too makes me feel that I'm not the only one going through this, and knowing that other women have gone through it and have been able to come out of it, it just gives me a little bit of hope, and it gives the listener a little bit of hope in their own journeys.
That aligns so well. If you see us nodding and smiling for those watching on the video, it's like that's similar to, Women Share hasn't been around as long as your show. It's very similar in terms of like the reason for the shows, right? Yeah. Is I think, and specifically as women, we can support and lift each other up in those connections, right? I think it just helps to empower each other. So that
yeah,
your story really resonates. Yeah.
I think there's something so healing from telling your own story too. Right? To your point, like if you've repressed that for a long time, getting to have a platform where you get to actually tell your story and have other women go, oh yeah, me too. There's something just like so healing about that journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And I think as women too, we need to share our stories more. I know a lot of women feel like, well, my story doesn't matter, who's going to listen to me? But I think if it can impact one person, I mean, you've done your job. What if that person could be like the next Oprah or the next world leader? You just never know. That's why sometimes it's, just hearing just one story can make a difference in the world.
So true. So true. And so on your show, you've had more than 800 women as guests.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's fantastic. Congratulations. Like, tell us a little bit about what themes have emerged across those conversations on their journeys to building that self-confidence.
Yeah, I think self-love was really important. As women, we tend to love the good parts of ourselves, not really giving ourselves unconditional love. So learning to love yourself was a big one. Showing gratitude, just being able to realize your potential to go out there and be the person that you're meant to be. I think sometimes we have all these challenges that we go through, and sometimes we hit a boiling point thinking like enough is enough. We need to do something different. And so that's how these women are able to go out there and do something different, because they've hit a boiling point. They've had this aha moment that made them realize, I can do this. I'm going to figure it out. And they're able to go out there and do it. So, the journey isn't like roses and butterflies and rainbows and cotton candy. It's ugly, right? It's messy. But
Yeah.
out of that mess, something beautiful comes along. So, it's a little bit more raw and authentic and more vulnerable, which I think is needed in this world, especially in social media. We see like these perfectly filtered photos and videos, not realizing we don't know what goes behind closed doors. And I'm not saying everyone is like that, but of course, sometimes on social media, we want to put our best selves, right? Not realizing it's okay to show up messy. It's okay to be authentic. It's okay to say, hey, today you're not okay, because not all days are good. So that's more of the theme, just more honesty, more rawness, more authenticity, being more vulnerable, showing that could be a strength and not a weakness.
Yeah. Well,
I was going to say, I picked up on the term real quick so you use the term boiling point. Like, I would love to dig in on that a little bit. Is that like meaning they're frustrated, fed up, or there's just some big transition in their life, or any of the above?
Yeah, I think it's more like they're fed up. They're fed up with the current situation that they're in. So they're like, I need to do something different, right? I need to go out there and live my dream life. Or maybe something horrific really happened, and that also was like a turning point. So, like, if someone, let's say you're at work and someone constantly puts you down, and in the beginning you're like, okay, whatever, he's just whatever, right? You kind of ignore it. But then if they're constantly like taunting you, you're like, oh, okay, this is a little bit too much. Like, I need to tell this person he needs to stop, right? Or I'll report them to HR or something, right? They've hit that boiling point because they're just fed up of being taunted for no apparent reason. So for some women, they've reached that boiling point, right? Maybe they have family members who treat them bad, or they have a bad boss, or they're just going through one bad situation after another, and they're like, okay, this something needs to change. Like, this needs to stop. So,
and I need to be the change in that. Like, how I show up is what I can control and change. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
One of the other things that kind of stuck out to me from that is that like growth-minded people who want to change and evolve, like that is not a linear process. Like, you don't go from here to here. Like, you go from here to here, and then something happens, and then you're up here, and then you're here, and then you're around. Growth is never a linear process. And I think the authenticity that you were talking about and the vulnerability shows us that we're all on our kind of own journey. We're going to get there when we get there in our own sort of pace, but that it's not like I've made this decision and it looks like this. I went from point A to point B and it was like easy breezy, right? Because we're the universe has a way of showing us where those spots are, those blind spots are, where we have the opportunity to make a different choice and to grow and to show up in a different way. Do you see that with your guests a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem. I think we feel like growth is linear, when growth isn't, like you mentioned, it's like a roller coaster. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, or you're going upside down, and it's okay. That's life. Like life isn't linear. Like life is full of
Yeah.
surprises. I think the pandemic was a huge wake-up call for a lot of people. Like change can literally happen at any given moment. We went from like the world just like being normal to like lockdown,
Yeah.
like not being able to step out, no stores out. And so we have to learn, how do we adapt to those? How do we adapt to new situations, new environments? How do we pivot? What do we do, right? Being
Yeah.
able to build resilience and just knowing like no matter what the situation is, we're going to be fine. We're going to figure this out. And the more we just get, the more we just have that confidence to figure things out, that's how we get the results. I know as women, it's a little bit harder because, of course, society sees us differently. We've been painted a story where we have to show up as being perfect. But really, we can just figure things out as we go. And if we constantly just do that, just imagine we can accomplish. Like men do that all the time, like all the time, right? You ask them, well, how'd you do that? And they're like, I don't know. Because they really don't know, because they're just out there trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And it's great, right? And I realize if women did that, like just we would like just go so much further. But I know I also know we have a lot of standards, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not ladylike to do this, it's not ladylike to do that. If we go out there and forge our path, we're seen as aggressive and too much, while men are seen as confident for doing the exact same thing. So we have to learn to
Yeah.
also push through these like labels that we still go through today, so that we can normalize these things. It's not an easy feat, of course. There's a lot of pushback. Like sometimes we take one step forward and then 5 steps back, but that's what progress looks like sometimes, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and on that same note, you talk a lot about specific limiting stereotypes, in your experience that Asian women face, like being labeled as submissive or overly accommodating. How do these stereotypes, and I mean, all stereotypes really, impact confidence? And what can we do to sort of challenge that or dismantle that so we can show up and try the things more confidently?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is why sharing our stories is really important. Being the representation we want to see in the world. I mean, that's not easy, of course, right? Especially when you're like the first one to venture it out. You're figuring things out. You don't know if this is going to work. You don't know what the backlash is going to be like. But I mean, if we go out there and take action and just take it one step at a time to dismantle all these stereotypes, then we can normalize women being able to just live freely and not be bogged down by these stereotypes or these labels. Like one stereotype that I think all women go through is, being told that self-promotion isn't ladylike, it's tacky for women. But really, I mean, if you're in business for yourself, like, how do you expect people to come to you, right? Like, you have to promote yourself, and there's nothing wrong with promoting yourself because you're providing a service or a product that can change someone's life for the better. So, for me, it's just learning to keep showing up, learning to put myself out there, even if I don't like it, because I know there's a woman out there who's feeling the same way, who's feeling like scared and feeling like they are waiting for permission. So it just takes one woman to just open that door, break that barrier, so that we can bring along other women in the process.
Yes, and be that example, right? It's almost like through the example that you're setting, you're helping them to write themselves that permission slip, right? And being like, okay, look, there's Sheena. There's Sheena out doing the thing. I'm gonna, I feel inspired to be a little bit bolder in my approach. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you specifically, we talked about, balancing like confidence and likability as women. We were talking about that just a moment ago. And like, how do you think, in a work environment, we can support each other or be allies to other women in navigating that tension that we face?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes we can also be the problem, especially in a workplace setting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've dealt with women who have been catty. And that also stems from this mindset of lack, right? We think there's only one spot at the top. And so we're afraid to bring other women with us. And so first first off, it's a mindset shift, knowing that there's more than enough spots at the top, and it's important to bring women with us, because if not, then it's the same thing over and over again. So really having each other's back, really working together is important, because men work together all the time, right? Like that's how they're able to advance, because they collaborate, they have each other's backs. So as women, we need to have each other's backs, right? Help each other out, bring them along, because I've spoken to a lot of women, and unfortunately, sometimes they said it's the men who's actually more supportive than the women at times. And so I know this doesn't really get talked about as much. Maybe it's a taboo. I don't know, but I know it's a problem, and I think it's something that uh, as women we need to work together as well, right? It's not the only problem; it's one of the problems that needs to be addressed. Because as women, it is important to collaborate, to work together to find ways to lift each other up instead of bringing each other down.
Yeah, I mean, that was something about a year ago. We had someone on the show, Julie Ragatz, who did a really amazing women in wealth study. And she talked about the queen bee effect of, once you get to the top, sort of kicking that ladder out from underneath you and not helping the other women come with you. And it's very prominent in the financial services industry. A lot, I mean, in a lot of different industries, but in our industry specifically, we only represent about 25% of the people in the industry. So when a woman moves into a position of power, a president, a CEO type decision role, if she is not doing the things to help the other women in the industry, to your point, it can be very detrimental. And that was, Joanna and I both had huge light bulb moments reflecting on our own careers of coming across women that were like, oh, that's what was going on there. Because in the moment, you don't even necessarily realize what's happening, right? At least for me, I can only talk about my own experience. I will internalize that and take that personally. Like, this person doesn't like me or doesn't think I'm good at my job, when there's a whole system of things at play. And to your point, we have to dismantle it at the core before we really see the ultimate long-term change. Well, Sheena, we ask every guest, this is one of our very favorite questions. What is the best career advice that you've ever received?
I think for me, the best advice I ever got was, when one door closes, another one opens, right? I think as women, sometimes we're so afraid of losing our job, losing the opportunity, not realizing it's not the end of the world, and there's always new opportunities out there that we can seize. So maybe you just got laid off and you think it's the end of the world, but maybe that could be a good sign of starting something new. Maybe it's that time to start a business, write a book, travel the world, whatever that may look like. I mean, there were so many stories where people got laid off from their jobs during the pandemic and started a passion project, and then their passion project became a full-time career. So I think that's the best advice I've always gotten. Like, when I'm feeling doubt or feeling like, oh my gosh, like what if this is the only chance I get? Then I'm reminded of myself that when one door closes, another one opens. And it was actually my former boss who always reminded me of that when I was feeling doubt. He's like, don't worry about it. When one door closes, another one opens. So I always remind myself that.
Yeah. Well, and when you let go of things, you make space for new things.
Yeah.
Right. When you're always like, well, I want this new thing to happen. It's like, well, what have you let go of, at least like energetically, that will allow the space for the new thing to come in? Because you can't just keep piling things in, right? You can't hold on to it all.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I think that's the best career advice. And I hope, the people listening, it reminds them as well that just because when one door closes doesn't mean it's not the end. Like, there's so many other doors you could open.
Yeah. Love that.
Love that. Agreed. And then outside of, all of your professional accomplishments and your podcast and everything, what else can we celebrate with you today? Is there anything in your personal life you want to celebrate on the show?
I guess, it's a new year, so let's celebrate that. I do have a new book coming out later this year, which is called Bridging the Confidence Gap: How Empowered Women Change the World. So it's also a book on women leadership, talking about the things women face generally, how we can tackle that, so that we can have more women in leadership. Because there's been reports that if we have more women in leadership in corporate, in entrepreneurship, in government, everybody wins, right? So how do we get more women in leadership? What do we need to do? How can we bridge this gap? And so this includes everybody. Like, how can men also help bridge this gap, right?
Right.
What can women do to start feeling more confident to be the leader that they're meant to be? So, I talk about, or I write about things like a deep dive on imposter syndrome, because as women, imposter syndrome is huge. In fact, they mentioned, like, in the workplace, like 75% of women deal with imposter syndrome. And so, why do we go through that? What are some of the reasons as to why we go through imposter syndrome? And, how do we help women step into their confidence era so that they can be the women that they're meant to be, or the leader that they're meant to be? And then just sharing, like, the benefits of having more women in leadership. If there was more women leadership in each country, or just more women in the workforce, right? Just imagine how much more money the country would have, right? Everyone's GDP would go up. We'd have more money to build more better roads and have, just better things for our respective countries. So it's a huge win for everybody. But unfortunately, that's not always the case, right? If you look at the
Right.
current events for women, we're still set back so much, right? They mentioned that gender parity won't be achieved until 2154. Now it's actually delayed 4 more years. It won't be achieved until 2158. And that's the earliest. So at this rate, it's going to feel like it's going to delay a little bit more. And when you see countries like Afghanistan, where women's rights have been stripped away from them, it's really heartbreaking, because if one country can do that, other countries can follow suit as well. When we hear
Yeah.
women aren't allowed to speak in public, aren't allowed to show their faces, aren't even
Right.
allowed to sing in their own homes, which is really ridiculous, right? Like, what we take for granted is just like basic human rights. That someone's like freedom that's been stripped away from them. So it's really important as women, we do have to speak up for each other. I know sometimes we're like, well, I don't live in that country. What do I have to do with it? It's like, no, because as women, like, this can affect all of us, right?
Yeah.
So it is important to speak up for them, to show up and talk about these things, right? There's so many things in the world that we don't even know is happening, especially when it comes to women, that's not talked about in mainstream media because it's not trendy, it's not newsworthy, but it's also important to bring up. So super excited about that. That's my second book. I never thought in my wildest dreams I would ever write a book for a huge publisher like Wiley. So having one book was great. So having two books was like, oh my goodness, this is like awesome. I never thought that could ever happen to me. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity, and knowing that, if I can do this, literally anyone can do this. Like, I came to Canada not knowing how to speak English. I had to take English classes so that I can learn how to put sentences together, because my sentences didn't make sense. And so, I never took a writing course. I really just figured it out.
Yeah.
And
Well, and you're living it. I mean, you're living what you talk about, right? So you've walked the walk, and who better to learn those skills from someone who literally did it from the ground up.
Thank you.
Amazing. It's really
Yes,
amazing.
congratulations.
And this has been such an amazing conversation. If somebody is interested in connecting with you, ordering your book, pre-ordering your new book, where's the best place to do all of that?
Yeah, for sure. So you can check out my website, SheenaYapChan.com. You can order my current book, The Tao of Self Confidence. A Guide to Moving Beyond Trauma and Awakening the Leader Within. So that's on all like major book retailers like Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, Indigo. For the upcoming book, there you can pre-order it. It's available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Indigo, and other book retailers worldwide. If you'd like to also connect with me, I'm on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. If you forgot anything that I mentioned at all, you can literally Google my name, Sheena Yap Chan, because I'm the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet. And also on my website, I do have a free quiz that will tell you your self-confidence personality. So that's on Sheena Yap Chan.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll have to go do that.
Yeah, yes. Well, thank you, Sheena. We just really appreciate you taking the time and joining us today. And congratulations again on your existing book and your upcoming book, and sharing your story and doing your part to pay it forward and help other women. So thank you. Yeah.
No, thank you. It's such an honor to be here. So I'm just grateful for this opportunity.
Thanks. That is our show for today. If ours is a mission that you want to share in, subscribe to Women Share on your favorite podcast platform. With that, I'm Joanna Erisman.
And I'm Leah Alter, and we will catch you on the next episode of Women Share.